what's up, Garrett? I'm just posting some shit in the thread. You're welcome to as well. Bear with me, guys. I'm just posting some elf stuff in the thread, so give me a sec. So we'll start with these ELF and VLF. They're so low that if the power needed to push them pretty much propagate around the planet is pretty much null. And these things are actually Puharich has a paper, I think it's a book or a paper where he talks about he discovered that with certain frequencies at the atomic level in our DNA, some things align, and they align specifically for specific frequencies. And so he figured out that he could elate certain feelings and things like that from these devices. That he was one of the, well, let's say this, from 3 to 10 is what I read he ended up kind of just messing with. But there's lots of information out there, and I think ELF and VLF is all the way up to 300. So I know what's scary about it. I made a joke the other day is like, even if you're running from a VLF or ELF wave, you're technically running towards it because that shit can propagate the planet. So, and the as little battery or power as this stuff takes, it's pretty worrying. And I posted in the thread, it was, I think it was Project Elf with the Navy. I think it was Operation Elf and Project Elf. And it was just it was a program in Michigan that they had set up, and it was for communication with submarines because, again, these low frequencies can propagate and just keep going. So subs can pick them up underwater and know to come up. Now imagine if that's all it takes and someone knows specific frequencies or knows this, and you can, I mean, the papers are out there. There's papers from China. This stuff talks about basically making a population docile. That's what Puharich talks about when he's talking about elf waves for peace. He's basically saying, you know, brainwashing everybody into being a docile population, which kind of blows my mind. Not really. It's Puharich. What am I thinking? Puharich. It's an act. This guy. But yeah, so these waves. And then what really got me thinking is the other day we had some people in space, and one of them we got to talking. Some of the things that they were talking about actually blew my freaking mind. So she said that she worked for a company, and the companies for sure have products that are designed to, on the low, give off these waves, and you would never know it. You'd walk by the device, and your body would feel it, and you'd get whatever reaction. That's pretty crazy. It blows my mind. So I've been kind of looking into that, and then today I spent most of the day just kind of researching a bunch of stuff I can't really talk about yet, but it got me to thinking. So the Schumann resonance. What do you guys think of that? None of you think of that? Bear with me, guys. Here we go. What I wanted. So, elf waves and EEG entrainment, a psychotronic warfare possibility. I'm going to read this to you guys. And this is adapted from a tape recording of a 35 millimeter slide presented by Bob Beck at the 1978 United States Psychotronic Association Conference in Atlanta, Georgia, Part 2, continued from the February 1980 Journal of Borderline Research. Is there a censorship of literature on extreme low frequency elf waves and electroencephalograph entrainment? Apparently, Mr. Beck told his conference audience that in the early days of elf wave research, he found 182 references to the effects of elf electrostatic and electromagnetic fields on human performance, moods, etc. But later, when he sent one of the students to the biomedical library at the University of California at Los Angeles to look up some of those references, the students found that many had been sliced out of this text with a razor blade. How about this relationship between the mean annual magnetic activity and the number of sunspots? Again, man is a biocosmic transducer. We know we live on a planet that is fairly well predicted. 7, 21, 11, etc. cycles. What about this curve of magnetic storms? That's the top one. And the morality from the nervous and cardiovascular diseases. A guy with a 25-watt transmitter with a Luxembourg effect, which means a circularly polarized antenna aimed at an ionosphere with a few hertz frequency difference from a 50,000-watt broadcast transmitter, can mood manipulate in an area of about 200 square miles. Dangerous? Yes. How about comparison with daily periodic changes in the Earth's electric E and magnetic H fields and rhythms of living organisms, circadian rhythms? All these graphs, which you are going to see for the next few minutes, incidentally, are from medically accepted literature, from the medical journals themselves. The dielectric constant of water, the magnetic transducer, to Tom Bearden, Allah. I'll give you a copy of this to print. Tom, you don't need to know this. That magic occult number. 7.8 hertz. Any of you people know Dr. Ed Maxey, Stanton Maxey in Florida? Okay, about the time I was playing with it, he did an interesting, very experiment. He took a little coil, a few turns of wire, put it on the floor underneath the operating table. What do you call those damn things that have in the electro? Gosh, I can't even pronounce that shit. Somebody come up and help me pronounce this shit. Cephalographic, with a check for epilepsy. He found that by tuning this thing on at certain frequencies, a large percent of the people tested had brainwave entrainment. Entrainment simply means that their brainwave, the firing of the neurons, latches onto this magnetic field coming from this little coil, putting out microgauss. You can't even measure things this low unless you have highly sophisticated equipment. It is occult. It is invisible. It's tasteless, odorless. This is in a paper that he presented to a Geophysical Society meeting not too long ago. He too came up with the magic number that I have, 7.8 hertz. He found that exactly 4 seconds after this field went on, the subject's brain would lock onto this frequency and phase. How about this for a covert manipulative tool? 7.8. That's the member of the audience. 7.8 is the number that he used. I bet. We refined that down to 3 decimal places. Okay. Man, woman, the biocosmic transducer. A lot of people a few years ago began looking at the possibility that man is a biocosmic transducer. Not only a transmitter, but a receiver, and that somehow his brainwaves can lock on and modulate this, the Earth's field. And this might be the medium for ESP. Some good work is being done at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, in the Brain Research Department. Dr. WR80 was one of the government grants sponsored by the Office of Naval Research into the effects of these. Even in the case of pulse, very high frequency fields that were pulsed with very low frequency modulation. His published papers and this go back several years and show that this could influence the brainwaves of cats and monkeys. And he didn't talk about the work that was done out there with human beings because by now this was fairly sensitive. They knew it worked. They didn't know why. So a lot of the time, money and effort went into finding out what in the human brain was beginning to respond to this. At this point, the reader might well ask, what is the Navy doing looking into electromagnetic modification of the human behavior? And is this for the defense of the nation? Why be so secretive about it? Unless, of course, the real target of the psycho-political warfare is the people of the nation. Now, a few German physicists were looking into the possibility that this may have been the mechanism that we lived with for thousands of years. The name of this paper is The Biological Effect of Extremely Low Frequencies in the Atmosphere. In other words, if we live in a natural health environment, could this possibly be the key and mechanism for mass accidents, mass suicides, etc.? All of the people who did this work independently, Tromp in Holland, Koenig in Germany, found yes. When they went back to the weather records, this had to be a mechanism that caused all of these admissions to psychiatric hospitals on certain days, all of these homicides. The data is beginning to become massive. James R. Hammer, he was working with human subjects and he was disappeared, as have a few others. Damn. He did some extremely interesting work, and this was way back in 1968. At the time, he was with the Space Biology Laboratory, Brain Research Institute, University of California. The rest of his papers that I managed to gather about 10 years ago are now classified. You can't get them for love or money. They have been status. Hammer found that in a 9 hertz signal, the reaction time was definitely shortened. You were more alert. If you change that signal down a few cycles per second, 3 to 5 hertz, look what happens to the reaction time. This applies to human beings, monkeys, cats, apparently all life forms that have brainwaves. Trump did the same thing independently. Some more of these papers that were generated in the Office of Naval Research granted to UCLA. Another slide. This is another of the papers which was subsequently classified. At the time, he was doing work openly with Northrop Space Laboratory. And this was an inter-office memorandum which survived the classification process. If you'd like to see that, I'd be happy to share it with you. How are we affected by alpha waves? Let's get out of here and into other things. Solar activity and incidence of cerebral spinal meningitis. Tom Bearden was talking about carrier possibilities. We don't know whether the waves lower the resistance or you can actually put the information on them and if it's recreated inside the nervous system. Crest days of weather pain in relation to sunspots and magnetic disturbances. Rowdy diseases of the nervous system and the lower curve of the sunspot activity. In other words, we're looking here at the natural ELF phenomena before it began being manipulated. Sunspots, Earth's magnetic activity, again, epidemic meningitis. So, before I go into any more of this, I actually don't need to. The reason I wanted to read that, talking about the role the Navy research was doing with that, right? And I also posted in the thread that I think it was Project ELF. They said it was used to, again, communicate with submarines. So I found that out today, and I just wanted to kind of get on here and post it, throw that on here. Anybody want to come up and talk? Bear with me real quick, guys. Here we go. How to manufacture a psychic. Again, here's an artist's conception, which I've adapted to show the synchronized brain wave activity, the stranger within. If psychics are people who have a particular brainwave pattern, we don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Can you make a psychic by driving his brainwave to their particular frequency? Marvelous question, don't you think? Brilliant. I wish I'd thought of it. Our first attempt at manufacturing psychics and radionics operators and healers was to put these light bulbs in an empty eyeglass frame. On the left is an incandescent bulb, and on the right is a little cold cathode indicator, like on your FM radio turner. We flash these little lights in real time to the Schumann resonance. It's crazy. We pick the Schumann resonance up on a coil, filtered out everything except the wave to which the psychics would entrain and fed them this little flickering light. If you flash at the light in a person, flash the light in a person's face, you can evoke potential in the occipital cortex. That's the photic response. And you know that if you hit a certain frequency, you're going to turn the person onto epilepsy. So you'll have to, or a seizure. Remember all these nightclubs in New York, the psychedelic clubs and all that stuff going on in a lawsuit. Okay, when we test for epilepsy in the hospital, they flash these lights in your head at a certain frequency. We want to avoid that. Now, what was marvelous, except for one thing, it takes 100 milliseconds for the time the light flashes the signal to cause an evoked potential. So let's say that again. It's 100 milliseconds before you get an evoked potential, which is saying, which you can't hear these waves. You can't feel these waves. And that's all it takes before you get a reaction. So you don't even know it's there, and that's how quick it happens. So I have a feeling what we're describing here is also, well, obviously Herrick was involved, Star Kid. This is what they put the Star Kids through. 100%. You know, what they're describing in here towards the end about psychic potential, I think there's more advanced to it. So I think, and here's some other information. So Herrick had, well, it wasn't just Herrick and Walter Breen, they had like 400 of them. There's like 400 of them. I think they're around 50 years old. And these individuals were subjected to this, some form of this, in MK Ultra, which produced, I want to say, Star Kids. So USAF and NASA, the kids who communicate, one form of them. That's what I'm going with right now. That's why I got on here to post this stuff before I lost it. So, guys, I don't really have a whole lot to say. If no one else is going to talk, I can sing for you. Oh, I will say this though. So, we'll give a bit of a MH370 update. I'll move on. Okay, I'm not a big fan of that shit right now. Trust me. I'm only talking about it because it's reverse engineered tech. Believe me. Okay. So I'm still going to stand with what I said. Everything that I've researched, all the stuff I posted, everything says Blackwater, BlackRock with China. Because of their ties over the semiconductors, and Blackwater, who was also the one that we still don't know about, crashed in Alaska because they have a underground place there, right? I think it's near Fish River in Alaska. Matter of fact, I think it's in a megalith. They probably the other end of the port's there. I'm going to stick with that shit. I haven't changed it since the beginning. I just keep developing it. So I'm sticking with that. But I don't know what. And here's the other thing. Oh, Delta 2. If you look up the Delta 2 Space Squadron, right? Space Force Squadron, Delta 2 is literally a quick reaction Space Force, offensive unit. And if you look at where they're located, Diego Garcia and all these other places. So pointing more and more like that. What do you guys want to talk about? Put something in the thread, I'll talk about it. Otherwise, I'm probably going to close the space out. I just wanted to post this elf shit in here. What's up, Jules? You want to come up here and talk? I need somebody to talk to. Oh, somebody left when I said that. Damn. What's up, man?
Hey up, how are you?
Good. It makes it a lot easier to have somebody to talk to.
Oh,
So, hey, let me ask you, what do you think? Do you know what elf waves are?
yeah.
What do you think of them? Do you think it's all a conspiracy, or do you think they've honestly been used already?
I don't know, to be honest. I sort of wonder if it's a bit connected to the hum that people hear. You know those people that suffer with the hum?
Yeah, I do.
I sort of wonder if it's a similar thing.
Good. That's a good point. Like maybe, you know why that kind of makes sense? You know how some people can kind of hear lower frequencies and things, and maybe that's what's going on. That's genius.
But then again, I mean, there's a lot of people talk about the 5G thing, isn't there? But I know that there's a website I saw a long time ago, where people were sort of reporting where in the world they experienced the hum and different places, and it was there were like lots of clusters of people in similar areas, and I sort of got the impression it was perhaps a bit similar to that. I think it's something definitely military related.
It's always military related. I mean, what else is it gonna be? Like the only reason I'm Manchurian candidate right now is because my phone's sending me elf waves to do it. I'm leading you guys straight to hell.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, that
There's Trevor in the room. He'll have an opinion on it. I bet he knows about it.
who?
Trevor.
What did you say? I'm sorry. You want to give me their name on here? Just because you're Mr. Popularity and know everybody.
He's playing a guitar on his picture.
You come up and talk if you want. There you go.
Trying to see if I can get him to. He'll probably request a mic. Yeah, there you are.
What was the question? What topic or subject? I just walked in on the end of that conversation.
We just talking about elf waves. He said you're into elf waves, VLF, ELF, low frequency. Shit to control the masses.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of different theories. There's like no actual proof of anything yet, but I would definitely say it's more of like a Lockheed or BlackRock type organization. Definitely military involvement, though. Definitely, it could be how it's administered through the military.
Do you know, we were
Military
talking
action.
the other week, Trevor, in that other space about people that experience the hum, and we were sort of like, it sounds very similar to that, doesn't it?
You're gonna have to remind me which night I've slept since then.
We're in one of Shy's spaces, and we were talking about, different weird things that experiencers experience, and like people that experience the hum at certain times of year. And I always experience the hum from sort of November to January. And it doesn't matter where I am, I can never get away from it. I can be sitting in the car, I can be other end of the county, different end of the country, and it'll just like I'll get these like it's almost like you can feel it vibrating through your body. And then it'll
Yeah,
stop as
I can.
mysteriously as it starts, and I can never detect what direction it's coming from. There's never a direction. It doesn't matter where you turn. It's not sort of like a problem with my hearing or anything, but at night I can lie in bed and feel it vibrating the metal springs in my mattress, but my partner can't detect it at all. And it's like this, it comes in waves. It's like, it's really weird, but I think it's the same thing, you know.
I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about. I experience things like that as well. I believe I said that in the room, but
yeah,
every now and then, usually through about May through July, almost August-ish, like I can hear a hum, like a low pitch frequency, like a hum. It's not tinnitus, it's not anything like that. There's like an electrical fuzz to it almost. You can like it almost makes my hair stand up, but I can feel it that much. But there's a low hum, and I can't explain it. Nobody else hears it, but it's almost like it's a sound off in the distance. Like if you were sitting in the living room, you would be able to hear it outside, that low pitch of a
yeah,
hum.
yeah.
But yeah, I experienced that as
And
well.
it dry. I mean, I had one year where it was really particularly bad, and I mean, it was really starting to bug me. And it would come. I just couldn't detect what direction. I even went online and looked how far from phone towers I was, and I was far enough away to not be affected by phone towers. I sort of checked my Wi-Fi. I checked, the fans in the computers to make sure it wasn't that I was hearing in the background. But I tell you what else I thought about as well. Um, there's people that are sensitive to electrosensitive people, and there's some stuff on the internet about that. And these people can be electrosensitive to
Did my audio just cut out?
yeah,
Jules, are you speaking?
yeah, yeah.
Thumbs up,
Yeah, he was.
down. Oh shit, I can't hear none of y'all. All right, hang on. I gotta step down. Sorry.
There's these people, Shane, that are electrosensitive, and I've heard quite a lot about it over here. People that are sensitive to um, different electrical systems like Wi-Fi and 3G, 4G, 5G, stuff like that. And I can actually hear electrical devices. I can detect the buzz. Like if I leave my TV on standby and I don't turn it off, I can hear it and it bugs me. Do you know what I mean? I can hear the hum that comes from that. Um, but like it's a different hum to the hum that I experienced between November and January. I think there's definitely some kind of strange frequencies, that are emitted that do things to people.
I agree with you. I was actually trying to post something in here, but it won't let me do it for some reason. So give me 1 second, man. Continue talking about Elfways. Matter of fact, let's say, you ever heard of the Gwyn Towers? So GWEN, capital letters, right? So Montauk, if you go look at what was it, Camp Hero? The tower looks similar to that. So picture, if you will, these waves, depending on they don't take a lot of power, and something like that can send them a good ways away. And then I've heard the shit that in plain sight that a lot of times pyramids. Pyramids are built like, I guess structures are built in a pyramid form, like all the old conspiracies you hear, for a reason. What do you think about that, Jules?
I didn't catch the end of what you were saying. You sort of faded out a little bit. You were talking. You said something about the pyramids.
Story of my life, man, fading out a little bit. I said like structures like being built by people, and so they can hide the fact that they're used, let's say, with frequencies like this. And I know that there's all the conspiracies out there about this being a pyramid. It looks like a pyramid for that reason, and that's what I was talking about. What do you think?
Well, I mean, like the thing is, like the more you look into sort of physics, some of the spaces I've been in recently, we've had this guy called Roy Hubbard come into, and he's really
Yeah, he was
interesting.
just in here, and
Was he?
he probably ran. Yeah, he probably ran when he heard me read that
Oh
shit.
no, he's really interesting.
Oh no, because I was choking on some words. Oh yeah, he's smart as hell.
Yeah, and he's working on something at Exeter University, something to do with some of these metamaterials that have been discovered. But basically, we were talking the other week in the space about waves and frequencies, and basically, a lot of the whole of the universe seems to work on like light waves, sound waves, different frequencies, and it seems to be that there is a connection between waves and frequencies in how the vibrations of things on the quantum level work. So it seems to be like there's a way of controlling things at a quantum level, and there's like frequencies that affect it. Do you know what I mean? And I think if you go back and look at sort of like the ancient Egyptians, I think the Great Pyramid. I'm not sure about the other pyramids that don't seem to be as good. They don't seem to be built in the same way as the Great Pyramid, but the Great Pyramid seems to have some connection with frequencies. And they said that there was like an aquifer, a water aquifer underneath it, that the water would create a resonance frequency that would travel through the pyramid and emit through the top of it as some kind of signal. So I think I think there's been some very, very ancient kind of um, kind of similar thing to what we're starting to discover now, that was tapped by ancient people and perhaps used in the past. There certainly seems to be some kind of evidence that a lot of these massive megaliths from the past are sort of working on some kind of resonant frequency kind of thing. I mean, the Great Pyramids, that's one, and then you get things like Stonehenge. Well, I mean, you look at what Stonehenge is made out of, and it was mined and taken a couple of 100 miles and erected in that you know space that it was erected in the south of England. It's almost as if that whole area is sort of experiencing resonance and frequencies of some description. If the crop circle things are real, it's almost as if they're being caused by some kind of undetectable frequency, because they seem to. I mean, I know there's a lot of fakery with things like crop circles, but there's a lot of real ones that have been found that go back through time, and they seem to sort of appear out of nowhere overnight or in the space of a few minutes, and it is almost like there's some kind of resonant frequency causing it. Do you know what I mean? People stand in crop circles and describe like really strange sensations and vibrations and things, and I think that perhaps you know people are being experimented on with things like the hum, and I think when you look at things like, and this is conspiracy theory stuff, but like some of the inoculations and injections that we have, I mean, there's been people come out with some really strange stuff since the COVID jabs, like people that have put magnets on their arms where they've had the injections and their skin's lifted up and stuff with the magnets. Um, it makes me wonder if there is some kind of experimental sort of testing done on frequencies that could affect us. And I mean, it's perfectly valid when you think, I mean, it's not a frequency, but it's some kind of similar thing. I mean, look how the moon can control tides on Earth. I mean, it's got a pull, a massive, massive pull over the tides and things. So, and I mean, that's something we can't see. We can't see that gravitational pull on the tides or anything. So I think, it's perfectly valid to accept that there are sort of like weird things going on with different resonances and different frequencies. When you think that must work, gravity and magnetism must sort of work in a very similar way to frequencies and resonance.
Right. Start posting stuff and listening. Well, so the Schumann resonance, like I'm posting a bunch of different articles about that, right? What they discovered is we get that from natural phenomenon, whether it be, anything going on in the magnetosphere, anything like that. So it's something that our brain latches onto. And just like any government, I have a belief that they would weaponize this shit, or they would figure out a way to, because again, maybe it wasn't intended for the masses, but I could see it definitely intended for a weaponized use, let's say, against other troops, things like that. But then if the wrong people get a hold of it, What's up, Kimber?
What's up, guys? Hey, I was going to come in and put my hand up and ask this question, and then I got a phone call. So forgive me if you literally just answered this, but could someone just break down the ELF wave or the ELF frequency for me? Like, what is that exactly?
Yes, I will. Actually, Roy could probably do it better than anyone. But so it's an extremely low frequency wave. That, and they also call a very low frequency wave, VLF, ELF. Okay. Both of these waves, they find, I guess the discovery comes along the lines of this Schumann resonance, 7.8 hertz. It's just a natural thing. We can get that from different things going on in the magnetosphere and all this other stuff. Well, they did the science. The scientists discovered that our brains, within milliseconds, 7.8, when that very low frequency interacts with us, our brains latch onto it, just automatically latch onto it. And what happens is these different frequencies, they actually, because if I'm understanding this correctly, like at the atomic level, DNA and everything, all that stuff magnetized, right? So the polarities can change and you can get things to align properly, which sounds a lot to me like the old cosmology. Here comes Roy, he's going to help me.
I mean, don't geologists use ELF waves to penetrate the ground? And I mean, I've heard of it being used in geology as well. Sort of, it's able to penetrate quite deep into the earth and see what's underground. So I mean, if like people were looking for oil or gas or trying to find somewhere to do fracking or stuff, they'd use ELF waves to get a picture of what was underground because it's really deep penetrating as well.
They also use it for like to communicate with subs, basically, so they know to come up and get a communicate. So they have. I posted in the thread. There was a naval place in Michigan, I think, and that's what the facility was supposedly for because they could push those ELF waves, and they go. And Roy could probably explain those things just keep going.
That's right, they do. Okay, the higher basically the frequency is restricted. Okay, for example, if you try to communicate with subs with a higher frequency, you would only reach about 2 to 3 centimeters of the surface of the water. You need those lower frequencies essentially, which are the longer waveform, to reach those sort of depths. That's what it's about. It's about lengths of the waveform, essentially.
So what I was saying, Kimball, is just like any good thing, someone's going to try to make it into a bad thing. And I was talking about earlier, I was reading a little part from ELF waves and EEG entrainment. EEG entrainments, when your brain locks onto it, the psychotronic warfare possibility. And they talk about in there the devices they use to stimulate these things and what they can do, what they can stimulate. They hypothesize ESP psychic abilities, which sounds a lot to me like what the Star Kids went through, right? And trying to produce specific effects with these elf waves. These elf waves are a big part of MK Ultra across the board. What's up, Kim? Well, go ahead.
Yeah, so Roy, just two questions. First one, so is ELF, is that extremely low frequency or extremely long frequency, or are they synonymous? And then number two,
they're synonymous.
okay. So number two, then, based on what Shane just said, I mean, does that all add up to you? Does that, I mean, based on your
it makes a
knowledge,
lot of sense. Yes, basically, what you can do with these sorts of things is we're only just learning about this sort of stuff. I mean, I am no expert on waves or radio frequencies or waves in that respect at all. I mean, my knowledge about this sort of stuff is very, very basic, and probably Shane's probably more worded up on this than me.
But Roy, before you go on, isn't gravity a form of wave as well?
That's debatable, my friend. Okay, here we go. This is my hypothesis. What we perceive as a gravity wave is essentially a ripple of slowed time in the symmetry of time, if you consider time being a fluid symmetry. So you've got to think of it in another context, as it were, outside of our four dimensions, like another dimension as such, above that, another contextuality, essentially. And that gravity is born of that emergent determination of what things are. Okay, so turning on how complicated you are, you will get a different length of dilation, essentially. Black holes, it's off the scale. Yeah, and we see enormous forces of gravity associated with them. But where something has a faster relative rate of time, there is no inertia of gravity. So if we go to like a riverbank and just look to the river, where the river is slowed by the flow, as it were, of the banks essentially slow the flow, there is a passive inertia that drags the flotsam on the surface to the shores. But midstream, the fastest flow in the stream, as it were, has no inertia. So we can start to think of time as like a fluid-like symmetry that's flowing, okay, and that we are like abstractions in a slice across the river, as it were, in a dynamic moment that you could call a now. But outside of us, as it were, in a virtual, like, contextual domain, that sort of you sort of got to step right back, as it were, okay, and then you apply those fluid dynamics, essentially basic fluid dynamics, to that emergent time, and that then resolves what gravity is, as just that passive inertia, essentially, from the slowing of the flow of time.
but that's also relative to objects. I'm a graphic designer, so I have no clue what I'm talking about. But isn't that relative to objects which have gravitational force, like the Earth, the planet?
Yes. Well, the more complicated you are by a mass or motion, okay, the more dilation. So what we need to do is to unify the two theories of relativity that cover both mass and motion. We need to step down a contextual domain layer of our reality, essentially, and look to another domain, which I consider where time is emergent from, which is the parental domain of quantum information. So if we now take as mass and motion is just essentially a complexity of its determination of that quantum information, that then returns a result, as it were, that moment of now, that change. That change has a length, and that length determines the force of gravity. So it's like a rendering process, as it were. And it's the length of that rendering process that causes that stress, essentially, upon time itself. And that stress of time, if you can say that everything is governed by the laws of conservation, then we can say that time is also governed by those laws of conservation, and therefore time could be considered a fluid symmetry. If we look to it a novelty, which is like a waterfall fountain novelty that takes a burning incense from the top. It has an aperture. When the smoke, hot, is forced through the aperture, it is forced to share linear motion. That linear motion triggers that conservational symmetry, which applies a fluidity to the smoke. The hot smoke becomes a fluid and falls with the force of gravity much more accelerated. Now, what that's doing is that conservational symmetry is actually overriding the laws of physics by overriding the laws of convection. So this is a very powerful thing, this conservational symmetry. It is essentially the first law. And I've encapsulated this whole thing with a thing I call dynamic behaviorism, in that the properties of any moment, as it were, of those nows, denotes the behavioral outcome. And that dynamic effect as such can be manipulated. So just like water, for example, if you change the properties of it, it can become a solid. It can also become a gas. It can also become a plasma, and so on. So those different phases of existence can be changed according to the properties of any particular moment. And that's the hypothesis that solves all the riddle with our friends of transitional phases and so on, and being faster in time and those sorts of things. And therefore, if you're faster in time, you can negate the force of gravity. So if you put all that together in your heads, okay, muster upon that, the whole problem of UAP, gravity, time, and everything is resolved.
So if there's a relationship, okay, so the relationship between the moon and the earth and how the gravitational pull of the moon affects tides on the earth, if you were to look at gravity as a sort of a wave or a frequency, would it fit into a wave or frequency scale? So you've got microwaves and you've got radio waves and blah blah blah.
It fits into the wave analogies, Jules, in that essentially, if you can imagine that time itself is like that fluid symmetry, it's like a flowing stream. Okay, and we were to drop a pebble in it, it would have a ripple. Okay, and that ripple essentially is what's happened with the pebble, the information about the pebble. That information travels out, and as it does, the universe has to quantify that information. That slows time. So you can imagine gravity waves are essentially just a ripple in time.
Yeah. So if you were to sort of look at something, okay, so there's these different, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the moon affects people's moods and things as well. So if you were
loony.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at sort of crime figures and medical information about, say, for example, the full moon, there's always a lot more crime, and there's a lot more violent crime, and there's a lot more medical intervention in like accident and emergency units for crimes during periods of when there's a full moon. So it would suggest loosely
let me read you this
that
to you.
this.
So you just said that. Let me read this to you. You weren't in here when I brought that up. So it actually mentions this right here. They did some research. Let me find where was it. So now a few German physicists were looking into the possibility that this may have been the mechanism that we have lived with for thousands of years, meaning elf technology, the natural versions, right? The name of this paper is the biological effect of extremely low frequencies in the atmosphere. In other words, if we live in a natural elf environment, could this possibly be the key and mechanism for mass accidents, suicide, etc., for people checking themselves into hospitals en masse on specific dates, i.e., moon, things like that? So I just want to bring
that's exactly what I was getting at, because it's like with these ELF waves that are used, and that people, they seem to have some kind of resonant frequency with the human brain. If gravity is on a similar sort of scale to that, and it is detectable like some kind of wave, then perhaps it could be that things like the moon earth relationship for a long time could have a natural effect on behavior and how people perceive.
Well, we know that it does. I mean, if you look up the word lunacy and where it actually comes from, it comes from the lunar cycle. And that sort of we've lived it essentially. The asylums will always go crazy, as it were, at the full moon.
And what I was saying before you came in the room, Roy, was that, like, if you look at some of these ancient structures that have been built by people in the very distant past, like the Great Pyramid and Stonehenge, and the materials that they're made of, there is evidence that some kind of frequency effect was used in the ancient past with that. And I mean, you can also look at frequencies being used with very ancient people to get into some kind of transic state or meditative state with music as well. That's sort of very similar. Yeah, we knew similar frequencies to these ELF frequencies, isn't it?
Well, no, not really. That's a different sort of ball game altogether. So most of the low frequencies we can't even hear, Jules.
But there is sort of like some kind of relationship with frequencies and mental state. If you look sort of
music can change your mood, and that's a form of wave.
Yeah, I mean 30 to 50 hertz seems to sort of resonate either with with the brain to put people into some kind of shamanistic meditative state, or it's a very similar pattern and beat to the human heartbeat, and that seems to have an effect on people. So I'd say that there is sort of like natural versions of, like what Shane was saying, sort of natural versions of frequencies and resonances being used to affect mood or behavior in some way.
Oh yes, that's been used throughout hundreds and hundreds of years. The music is used today in hospitals to improve, the figures, as it were.
I mean, there's even been research done into different frequencies creating healing in wounds as well, hasn't there? I mean, I've read some stuff about wound healing and different frequencies being used.
Well, the Royal Horticultural Society did some studies with plants listening to different types of music, and they actually do grow at different rates according to different tunes.
So could it be that there is some kind of background frequency that everything resonates with on some kind of level?
Yes, essentially everything has a frequency. Yes, very much so.
And then if you get sort of like rogue governments or secret experiments that governments do, they could effectively use some kind of frequency to affect people's moods en masse.
Yes. I can't comment on that.
now, that's where I come in. I'm going to go conspiracy and say, I think the original intent of this was not like that. Right now, I'm not saying I know, but I think I know. So my point is, all these individuals who have been tied to different programs, right, were big on this. Matter of fact, Herrick has a freaking paper called Elf Waves to Peace, which the entire premise is utilizing these to make everyone docile. So I think that bad actors, that doesn't always mean bad people. Bad actors could be a good government, but doing stupid shit. So my point to bring this up is this technology's been there for so long. And then that woman, a lady the other day told us she knows of her work. There are patents for download devices that emit specific hertz of elf waves. You would never know it, never feel it. And it just makes me think, right? It's like, wow. Because that's all it would take. One bad actor with the idea and I guess the nuts to put into it. Because the papers are all there, what it can do. They, like you said, binaural beats, all these different things are used on your, but this stuff here's something extra. Like picture this, the human resonance, they talk about relatch onto that. So what I kind of understand, I'm not saying cosmology in itself, but that energy, that frequency, the way things flow just naturally when there's events, like you said, full moons, or you got the freaking northern lights, things like that change this, right? Anything in the magnetosphere. So once they latched onto that, I mean, I cannot see somebody somewhere in some way trying to utilize it to shit. Well, the big thing I'm thinking.
There's always that chance, Shane. There's always that chance, bro. Nefarious ends, as it were. We've always got that chance.
You're right. You're right.
I mean, there's also things like binaural music that is some kind of has some kind of resonance with the human brain, and can sort of like have a calming or energizing effect depending on which frequency you listen to.
Have you had your brain synced?
Yeah.
Kimball's got his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Kimball.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. Let's see, can I remember my questions? So based on what you guys talked about, I mean, you explained the ELF, low frequency, long frequency, same thing. And what Shane said about those frequencies and what they're capable of, you kind of affirmed, Roy. But like,
I'm no
at what
expert
point
on
does
frequencies, mate.
no, yeah,
Okay.
well, you said that. You said that. You even said that Shane probably knew more than you. So I'm just
he
trying to.
probably does on this one.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out exactly like what's the function, what's the functional metric that the average layman, whether they're into the phenomena and woo or whatever, not like, what is the functional metric there? Like, what leads you to believe that a long or low frequency would have an effect on humans beyond what we might assume?
Because the electromagnetic spectrum is what everything exists on, right? In some form or fashion. You tweak it this way, you make this, that, whatever. And I'm not a scientist. What I'm saying is frequency, whether we choose to think about it or not, is literally how everything is kind of connected. So the VLF.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard frequency and vibration, right? Wasn't that the phrase?
Yeah, frequency and but wait, no, it's very low frequency and then extremely low frequency, right?
Or is it sound? Frequency and sound. Someone, go ahead.
Okay, where we lost Kimball, because it's all right, man. I promise you, bro, this is new stuff to me.
I know.
Bro, this is all new to me. I've been going hard into it.
In the past couple of years, I want to say someone pretty prominent, I don't know if it was Valet or someone else, but they said frequency and sound. Those are kind of like the keys right there. Is frequencies and sound, or maybe it was frequencies and vibration, but I feel like frequency and vibration are the same thing. But again, I don't delve in this.
Well, they are and they aren't. They are linked. Okay, there are two types essentially. One that we associate with music, okay, and one that we associate with electromagnetism. But the two venture into each other in that essentially sound is itself another form of wave. Okay, so everything travels through our universe essentially in waveforms. Now, you, me, and everything around us, we think we're physical, but in other contextualities of existence, we are waveform as well. Okay, so those waveforms can affect our waveforms and so on and so on. So yeah, Shane is right. There's a consequence with anything essentially. And like I said, we're probably just discovering some of this stuff. It's all very new.
So I get real quick before Jules, Roy, how do you, based on your expertise and your background, what prevalence do you, or like salience do you give on all the delta waves, the theta waves, the beta waves, like all the, I guess the frequencies or waves that we often hear cited in, I guess, the quote unquote woo side of things?
I really don't go into it, Kimball, for those obvious reasons. Stick to what you know, as it were. I don't profess to know everything. Do you know what I mean? I know quite a hell of a lot of quantum physics and stuff. Yeah, but
I feel like the value you add is in the falsifiable world. If I shared an image that some of these people share, could that help, or is it just not something you're willing to touch?
No, it's not something that I'd really want to get involved with at all. As it is, it's hard enough pushing through some of these taboos that it is, my friend. You can imagine my position as it is now. I'm quite the maverick already.
I mean, there is some actual physical evidence to suggest that there are effects of extremely low frequency electromagnetic fields on gene expression and visual working memory. And that was some stuff that was done about, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, on macaque monkeys, and they were exposed to different kinds of extremely low frequency magnetic fields. I think it was, and they actually found that it affected hormones in the body, and
not
gene
just not,
gene
not just that,
development.
not just that, but they saw signs of autism.
Yeah, it had gene, hormonal, and anatomic changes in these rhesus macaques, and I mean we're basically more advanced monkeys, aren't we? So I mean, you could say that, you know, if monkeys can be affected by sort of 12 hertz of ultra low frequency electromagnetic field, then exactly the same thing would happen with us. And I mean, there seems to be some kind of background frequency or resonance that a lot of things work on, and it seems to be very similar sort of range of hertz throughout the world. That I mean, our brains are basically working on a frequency. We work on electrical impulses. Our memories are basically stored as electrical impulses in the brain, and our nerves work on a frequency. It's an electrical frequency that we work on. So I mean, it's not a million miles from the truth to sort of expect that, you know, if people are exposed to other kinds of frequencies, or electromagnetic frequencies, then it would affect them. And I think that there's actually been some real stuff done. And I seem to remember reading something a few years ago about different kinds of radio frequencies used in wartime, either Second World War or possibly on the Viet Cong, to change their moods or affect them during wartime, by sort of the American governments and things.
Sorry, I was listening to some stuff.
Well, the military does have the denial system, which it can they can send out any sort of rays, like whether it be a sound or radiation waves, and just like knock you into your place. They can get inside your head, different frequencies. Like, yeah, the military has that system. It's called the denial.
That's right. Denial systems.
Go ahead, Kim. We'll talk. We really got to raise hands in here until it gets
Yeah.
violent out. I think there's 4 of us, thinking 5 of us.
I mean, I'm wilding on my end. I don't know about you, Shane. I don't know about you, Roy, but I'm wilding. I did just find an image I'm going to put in the nest, and I don't want to press Roy or Shane or anyone else too hard, but yeah, it was an image. It's an image that was shared with me by people who are, you know, more into the woo, into the psi stuff. Before we get, I'll post that here in a moment, but I just wanted to ask Roy real quick. Does he have any like hunches or intuitions as far as how these different wavelengths might affect human consciousness?
Well, everything essentially. All matter essentially is a form of energy, and any form of wave is a form of energy. So the one can interact with the other essentially, and we do. That's why we use sound to listen to things. So yeah, it begs further discussion and discovery. That is certainly a thing. But like I said, my particular skill is not within the frequencies domain of electromagnetism. Essentially, my sort of thing is time, gravity, quantum physics, and that sort of stuff, and emergent physics, essentially post Newtonian Einstein physics.
Isn't there a lot of research into sort of the effects of living near power lines and mobile phone masts that give off these ultra low frequencies, and how it can affect your health?
Yes, you'll be very difficult to sell your house as well if you were right underneath a power line.
Yeah, I mean they've found that it can. I think didn't they find that like the frequencies from power lines and mobile phone masts can cause cancer and things like that. So it's sort of like, yeah, that it does look like there's a lot of evidence that, I mean, it can have a physical and a sort of mental effect on the body, by us being exposed to frequencies that aren't sort of in line with what we're used to, or that we've built up tolerance to.
Exactly. I mean, we are products of our environment, aren't we, after all? I mean, we've not had these things around us for millennia. We're now instantly up, and we're wondering why we're getting all these funny things. But like I said, I'm no expert, bros. I can't really comment on this subject much.
I was trying to find something real quick. I'll say that, hold on. I'm not an expert, but I've been digging into this stuff for a minute. Like I said, I think Kuharic, it's been weaponized in some way. They've used it somehow. I don't know what population any of that, but I know like what they describe in that paper sounds like what they used on the Star Kids, and that's one of the things. And I'm trying to bring up right now. So let me see if I can find it. I got a bunch of the photos
Shane,
I had taken. What's up?
can I say one more thing?
Go ahead, dude.
Cool. So I just put in the nest this image, and then I also posted a link to where I found the image. It's the same image that has been sent to me before. Yeah, I'm not trying to be feisty or I hope for sure none of this is perceived as like questioning or doubting. This isn't my realm. This isn't my expertise. So at least based on the image, Roy or Shane, based on your expertise in physics, can you look at those and just would you be willing to offer any kind of intuition or priors based on those
no.
ways?
That's legit. I just posted an article with those in it.
Right. Okay. So Roy specifically, do any of these wavelengths, if you had a hunch, an intuition, a prior based on your scientific background, would you have a hunch or a prior as to how these wavelengths could affect human consciousness? I know, I don't, a lot of people have to protect themselves or protect their sources or whatever. I'm a layman here and I'm trying to get to the bottom of things.
Yeah, okay. There's a debate at the moment whether or not actually consciousness exists within your mind or if it's somewhere else. So even localized waves perhaps may not affect that greater consciousness, as it were. So I mean, the debate about consciousness itself has to be concluded essentially before we can even move on to anything else. It's a very, very difficult topic to get into. See what I mean?
Okay, so based on what you know and your understanding of physics, human consciousness itself can't really be ascribed to any of these wavelengths. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes. essentially, because one is of the electromagnetic is virtual in its context as well, whereas your brainwaves and the activity in your brain is of the abstract. You know, it's like formed out of electricity, the other side of electromagnetism. Now, because both of them share, they're the same side of the same coin, essentially, both sides of the same coin, that yes, there possibly is some sort of influence that one could take from that. But what that entails and how that would interact with consciousness is well, you know, you would have to set up some serious experiments and research into that particular field.
So there's no like falsifiable research that you know of that would ascribe any of these wavelengths to human consciousness.
No, none that I know of.
Isn't there some evidence that everything, even stationary objects, are actually vibrating or oscillating and resonating at various frequencies, and that there was some kind of connection with 432 hertz as sort of like a resonant field that is present in the background of the universe. And I'm sort of like thinking, sort of like there's some kind of synchronized vibration at the heart of sort of everything, you know, like physical reality. Generally things are vibrating, even something that is still is vibrating with a frequency.
Jules, there's a lot of people that do a lot of speculation about 432. It's okay. Quite a lot of it is nonsense. Okay, trust me.
Right.
Could Roy, could you maybe shed light on that? Like, even as pretend like I'm a semi-expert. Like, what are the indicators from your perspective that would basically designate something to be like preposterous versus maybe worth looking into on your end of it?
Well, one has to just check some of the claims that are made around 432, for example, about its frequency is that of a correlation between certain equinoxes, for example, if with just the math of 432, the number of 432 with the Earth and the Moon. But actually, if you check those maths, that is in itself nonsense. See what I mean? So quite a lot of the subject around 432 is nonsense.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just take this opportunity real quickly and just say, Roy, you know, as someone who, in my experience, we've talked before, we're not super close or anything, but I think you're valuable because you're someone who has a background in the hard sciences on this topic, but you're also open-minded enough to not feel intimidated or afraid to explore these topics in a non peer-reviewed context, if that makes sense. So I just maybe look at this scale here, and if you can, if given your trained lens, if you can perceive anything from this that would jump out as like potentially looking into or obviously bullshit on that basis, that would mean a lot to me, at least.
If I was you, I would look to the alpha wave as being the most influential in that it is the medium range, essentially, and things that are more settled, as it were, on the electromagnetic spectrum, have more physicality, so that they would have more influence. Okay.
Roy, doesn't string theory?
Well, as a beta, that's disappointing to hear.
String theory supports resonance, doesn't it, and different frequencies.
Well, resonance is essentially temperature. So the actions of the atoms, the motion of the atoms and their activity is essentially equates to temperature. So yes, very much so.
So does your theory support string theory being a working theory, or are you, because there's a lot of gaps in different theories, isn't there? Does your theory on gravity and time and everything fit in with string theory and resonance, or are you sort of a million miles away from that with your theory and it being something completely different?
Right. My theory deals not with the details of the physical realm. Okay. This is when people The details of it were essentially are on the quantum side of things and everything. That's all outlaid on Martin's account, Uniseven's account. What we've done there is correlated together to make it unify within classic physics. Okay, so what my physics is dealing with is what I call emergent physics, in that it's the I'm looking at things as if it was a simulation, a holographic simulation. Okay, that's what my hypothesis points to in that dynamic behaviorism thing that I call. Okay, in that the properties can be overridden essentially, and if you override one's properties, it changes essentially what phase of existence you exist within, whether you're solid, fluid, plasma, and so on. All those very odd things that we call the Beck phase, that really cold, faster relative rate of time phase. Now, so I'm dealing with things that are underlying the hood, as it were, of the universe. I'm dealing with that level of the cosmos, in that where is the cosmos coming from? That sort of physics. And that allows me to resolve gravity, because I see things from another perspective above, as it were, the cosmos. And I can, because my training is basically IT and information technology background to a quite serious extent, I sort of recognize certain patterns within that dynamic behaviorism that one could essentially use a methodology to explain them. And so that's the way that I pursued it. So I pursued unification from a top-down perspective rather than from the quantum physics up. Okay, so that's my angle.
So, I mean, your theory isn't that dissimilar to different forms of Schumann resonance being used to detect things like temperature changes in the atmosphere, because that is a thing, isn't it? Schumann resonance is used to detect tropical air temperatures and global warming, and Schumann resonance is also used to detect, if you go on a lightning strike detecting website and look at the different lightning detectors around the countries or the world, wherever you live, it's basically Schumann resonance that's being used there in a practical way to detect lightning strikes. So it does sort of like fit in that there is some kind of natural sort of resonance and frequency in the background, working on a natural level, sort of in and has been for a long time, and that to some extent we've become sort of used to or immune to certain frequencies, but then there are certain frequencies outside of that range that can affect us in a big way.
Oh, very much so. For example, microwaves will fry you.
Great example. So one of the things I was going to post in here real quick. Let me just kind of keep talking real quick. I'm going to post this timeline. So I was reading a book, Apparition in the Heartland. Basically, it's my name is Doctor. And it kind of goes into Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombings, and it starts talking about while he was Timothy McVeigh was in the service, using special forces. Basically, he was probably being, we'll call it MK Ultra. There's a very real possibility from what this doctor's found and put in there that he was a part of some kind of a program where they were using these VLFs. And I say that because a lot of the symptoms that he had, like he had no dental problems till he joined, and all of a sudden his teeth started falling out. He was constantly going to the dentist, but it gets even crazier. Let me post it because actually one of the individuals he's connected with was freaking Dr. Dr. West, right? So Dr. West, and then on top of that, one of the connections actually to Dr. West is a dentist. And Buharic has filed a patent for what's it called? It's not called a tooth radio. It's called a device I'll have to find that and post it in here too. But let me post the timeline in here. Yes, I know it's all conspiracy, but my point being not that he was Manchurian candidate. Maybe he was a part of a program that effed him up, right? So the reason I say that is, as you progress, if you haven't got the book, I'll post the book in here as well. The book's actually pretty amazing, and it'll walk you through all the stuff he went to and what the FBI omitted, all the stuff they tried to keep out because it pointed in a weird direction. So we'll bring Ashton up here as well while I do that. Yes, I know it's not conspiracy. I'm just going to post the timeline and the sources, and you guys can have your own say. What's up, Ashton? You there?
Don't think he's got a speaker yet. Probably takes a little while.
You guys, I'm trying to post this in here so you guys can see what I'm talking Let me ask you, the speakers, this. What we've been talking about, the ease of use, what we think it can do, none of us are really experts on this. Oh, I can't get them. Try it again. None of us are really experts on this. Do you think there's already devices that are unknown in the population somewhere, whether it be houses or just hidden in plain sight, being used in some form or fashion, whether it be, I don't want to postulate that. Do you guys think there's anything like that already going on?
Who knows, bro? Who knows?
Curious to that, right? Because you hear when you talk about it, it's a conspiracy theory. The more you piece all this stuff together, hell, they have the Elf waves, they have the Navy base that was shut down in Michigan. Its purpose was to communicate with subs, but it could be used for a lot of other things. Still posting the book, I'm slow. So you guys don't have to raise your hand. You can talk. What's up, Ash?
Hey, what's up, guys? Sorry, I couldn't hear anything when you brought me up before. Probably my bad. How's everybody doing?
Too bad. We're just talking about Elf and VLF.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are way above my head, but it's fun to listen to all this stuff. And Roy is, my favorite physicist, so I like to listen anytime he talks.
You're biased, though.
True,
You're biased.
true. I am.
Roy's probably close to 50 years old and a star kid. I agree, he's smart. But that was a joke, by the way.
No one's laughing. No one's laughing.
Roy's starting. I want to start this. I'm going to start it now. I'm telling you, he's smart enough to be. And if he is, wait, are you 50?
I'm 56, actually.
You're smart to be a star kid. That's for damn sure. Not that. I know. I remember I talked to you one time. What was it? You were telling me you had a paper getting ready to come out.
Your mic is muffled, bro, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
That's much better.
No, I was saying we talked one time, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can keep up what we're talking about right here." I have to break shit down real easy.
I try my best. Keep it layman. Keep it simple. That's the way to do it, really. That's why I use those river analogies and things like that. It helps people because, people been to the river. Yeah, Ashton, bro, you are playing with fire.
Yeah, I know that for a while, honestly, Roy. No doubt about that. Just even from the beginning, when I first saw the videos, and we're talking about the MH370 videos now. That's why I was so scared the first week, because really the only question in my mind was, what level does the government go to cover this stuff up? Is it like the movies where You know, they disappear people, or is it more benevolent, where they just try to discredit you and make you seem like a crazy person? But what I'll tell everybody in this chat is that everything that I've done has been methodical. I've watched everybody who's come before, and I wasn't necessarily part of UAP communities and what have you, but I'm familiar with Bob Lazar. I'm familiar with the various leakers that have come out, and I think that a lot of them are very credible, and I've seen what has been done to them, and I wasn't going to let that happen to me. And so far, I think we've avoided that. And that's why what we've done here is we've used just a Twitter account and Google to combat the most powerful nation in the whole world. And I think that if we have a small chance, maybe not a big one, but a small chance to get disclosure on our terms, which is what I promised from the beginning.
And as you know, the technologies are linked. So, yeah.
I think that's the biggest piece that I'm just starting to come up to. What we're looking at these
You're
videos
just
is
coming up
reverse
to speed,
engineered
aren't you?
technology. And that's the big missing link, is how do we unify this idea of what we're looking at to the UAP phenomenon? And I've always thought it was related to the materials in the craft, right? And I think that that is the
Yes.
missing link between what we're seeing and from the science perspective of the MH370 videos to UAPs.
Yeah, essentially that extended electron cloud. That's all you need to achieve, and then you get that package all free.
And the interesting thing about metamaterials for people that may not be familiar is that the idea is that if you can, at the atomic level, fuse materials together, and this may be a layman's term of saying it, you can create unique properties. So if you think of like LK99, for example, which has been out there, they just took copper and lead, and with the right recipe, and if you follow the recipe correctly, then we come up with superconductivity. And we create something that neither of those materials are magnetic on their own, but together they create a supermagnetic property. The same is probably true for other combinations of metals and elements in general. And I think that that will open the door.
God, you have been digging into that dynamics research, haven't you? You're absolutely correct. It is, and it is. Yes, a metamaterial comes to mind.
Yeah, I've been digging this stuff for a while. And the more I've talked to you, Roy, the more it's like, oh, God, everything's starting to come together in a way where I never thought it would in my whole life.
Now, all you got to think about is that phase has a much faster relative rate of time. Remember, it has simplified properties and it has a fluidity as well. So, as I said, it would require isolation.
Yeah, that's the part I've struggled with, is time dilation and understanding. It's a very difficult concept for the human mind to wrap its brain around, right? And I think it starts with understanding that space and time are one and the same, right?
Well, yes, essentially they're related in the effect that there are 4 dimensions and 1 dimension being the gauge, that is time. So if you manipulate time, essentially, you're manipulating the space-time metric. Now you get it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's going to warp my brain. I'm going to need definitely to think through this one a lot, but I think we're on the precipice, you know, in terms of understanding this stuff.
Okay. And imagine the flow of the river is essentially like a movie, and across it, draw a straight line across the river, and that you think to yourself that you exist across that straight line, as it were, in a moment. Okay, an eternal dynamic moment that just changes. But each of those moments essentially build up, just like that smoke, in a linear fashion, and therefore that conservational symmetry is applied. So time, inside sort of like a 5th dimensional context, as it were, outside of us, essentially has like a virtual fluidity applied to it. As soon as you realize that that virtual fluidity is there, and then it's just a matter of simple fluid dynamics, and then everything.
So if you're near the
so
if you're near the bank, then the time flows differently than if you're in the middle of the
correct. Okay, so at the banks, essentially, the banks act as a stress upon the flow of the river. And as such, any stress to any flow, if you look it up, fluid dynamics, you will see that the passive transversal inertia is born. It's all about lengths, maintaining of lengths, okay, and flows. The lengths are different, essentially, as you flow. So the faster stream is flowing quicker than the flow at the bank. So therefore, it's a natural curvature is born. That natural curvature drags the flotsam ashore to the banks. So that passive transverse inertia is the same for us as gravity in the flow of time. Okay, so that's the way you've got to look at that analogy.
And is that all happening due to the interaction between mass and space-time, or is
yes,
that
the entropy.
not necessarily related?
Yes, the entropy, essentially.
Got it.
So if we have to go to a different contextuality. Okay, so imagine our dualistic universe has two sides to the coin. One is the electromagnetic spectrum, that wave-like domain, okay? And another is the physical, the real, okay? We call that the abstract side of our reality. So one is virtual and one is abstract, okay? But that sits within a fluid-like flow, as it were, that domain, that but dualistic domain, and that domain is coming from somewhere else that we could say is a parental contextual domain, okay? The domain of quantum information. So if we step back there to that contextuality, the information, as it were, we can say that the complexities of our determination of our quantum information denote our dilation. Now, there's a return of that eternal moment of now, okay? And according to the length of that dilation, that's that stress, as it were, in the flow of time, just like the banks are causing stress in the river, okay, that create that passive inertia. So any difference in the rate of time between any two objects will create that attractive curvature. Okay, doesn't matter how different it is, can be absolutely minuscule, but an attractive force will be created. And if we slow time right down to almost stopped at black holes, the inertia is off the scales. But if we look to midstream of our river, in this analogy, the fastest flow in the stream holds no inertia. So there's no anti-gravity, there is only 0g, as it were. And that's if you hold a much faster relative rate of time than anything around you, i.e. you are the fastest thing in the stream, as it were. You will have no inertia. So in that quantitative phase state that has a much relative faster rate of time, that Beck quantitative phase is therefore now explains the levitational attributes of superconductivity as it simply being faster in time. There you go.
And so for the observer, then, if you are the person who is having that faster rate of time, how would that impact your relatively to other people? I guess
they would look like they were not moving at all. You've seen the movie Quicksilver, the scene where he goes around the room and licks the soup midway and that sort of thing. Be just like that. But unfortunately, they got a little bit wrong. He would basically start floating.
Interesting. Wow. This is incredible.
So now we can take those analogies of applying those conservational symmetries to time, okay, and that emergent moment, as it were, that I call dynamic behaviorism, which is revealing the modus operandi, essentially, of our cosmos, in that one of the things is that I've recognized is that this thing of dynamic behaviorism works independently of scale. Doesn't matter how big you are. If you have the properties of quanta, like a neutron star has an extended electron cloud, you will have that phase. And the recent LIGO results confirmed it. When we saw those neutron stars colliding, we certainly did see those transitional phases, which you probably looked up by now, hopefully.
I hadn't found them yet, but now that you just said that, I will be finding them later tonight.
Because they add massive weight to your argument, by the way.
So another kind of esoteric, I guess not esoteric, but just another question in general. So let's say there are aliens on another planet or another species somewhere. Their relative rate of time is going to be based on the mass of their planet, potentially, right? Because all of us would experience
not just the mass of their planet. Everything in the universe stacks, as it were. Locality matters. So we are on a planet. We've got lots of people around us with functional minds. This all weighs heavily on the universe, especially clever ones. Okay, in this schema, as it were. If you take this hypothesis to its nth degree, you follow that rabbit hole down. You've got that's sat in the solar system. That solar system is sat in a galaxy. All of this weighs upon time. Okay, that that dark matter aspect of that. And now that we've learned that matter is not really the thing that's responsible for gravity, it's essentially the time, the length of one's time. Okay, we can then say, okay, dark matter is no longer that matter that's missing. It's an unqualified form of dilation that's missing, and that unqualified form of dilation might well be life, for example, or it may be due to the maturity of the galaxy itself, in that when galaxies first start off as big cosmic clouds of hydrogen, nebulae, essentially, one can consider them to be the most simplest of forms of things, hydrogen. But as you combine those elements, essentially, in the stellar evolutionary process, they become more complex. The sum of their arguments, essentially, becomes different from that of the one cloud, essentially, and that the gravity is no longer the same as it was for that one cloud. It's much greater due to that complexity of that evolutionary process of the matter. So that then goes back to that thing I said of stepping back and then resolving the two theories of relativity. And it is the complexity of the quantum information. It denotes the dilation of time, and it is the dilational stress of that time that denotes gravity. That now solves dark matter, for example. So we resolve gravity, dark matter, UAP, everything just by simply thinking of time as a fluid symmetry.
So dark matter itself is not even necessarily real, but a property of complexity. Is that what I'm hearing, or did I misunderstand that?
Yes, exactly that. It is a byproduct of the maturity of one's galaxy, essentially, in that the original state matter that was there, that hydrogen cloud, should hold the same gravity as the end result, because essentially you never lose energy. The matter is still there as such. It's changed. It's constitutionally changed, but it's still the same thing. It should weigh exactly the same, but it doesn't.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, because the idea, guys, is that dark matter in general is this force that's keeping everything together that we just don't see out there and can't explain. And that's why we call it dark matter, because we can't see it, right? So people have been trying to determine, okay, well, what is dark matter? Before this conversation, I was under the assumption that somehow magnetism was accounting for it, which I think is kind of an out there theory compared to what science generally believes. I mean, if you look at the common theory, they think, oh, there must just be this additional matter that's out there. But what Roy is saying is the complexity itself from going to a cloud to more advanced states can account for that.
That's right, and as such does life, essentially, and those thinking minds, essentially the audience of the galaxy itself would weigh and provide us that factor of that missing dilation effect of time, which, as we know now, powers gravity.
So could it be the reason why we don't see any other species or advanced civilizations be due to this discrepancy in different time that people are different, that different beings are experiencing based on their states of complexity? Or is it more complex than that?
It's probably far more complex than that, in that probably they're a lot smarter out there, in advertising your presence in the universe is probably not the wisest things to have ever done.
Dark forest theory, or whatever it is. I forget that.
Well, no, I wouldn't call it dark force theory. I would call it common sense theory, in that every possible combination of mix that could possibly exist in our cosmos of its infinite size and complexity and so on, you're going to get every single type out there. Some of them are not going to be very nice.
Hey, real quick, guys, do me a favor, retweet the space. I don't even think I said that, but up in the nest, I also put the timeline. I'll kind of read it real quick. So this is back to the elf, right? So we'll start with 1918, Puharic's born. Puharic, 1950s, conducts groundbreaking research on the influence of elf waves emissions in the human mind. 1982, Puharic presents a paper titled "A Way to Peace Through Elf Waves" at the Understanding Convention at Astral. And then, date unknown, Puharic files a patent for a tooth radio, a device implanted into a tooth capable of receiving signals. Okay, now we're going to go over to the Timothy McVeigh portion. So 1968, he's born. Why is that? I think these dates are off, but I'm going to have to skip on some of these dates. But my point being, not necessarily in this order. So Timothy McVeigh actually ended up encountering Dr. Julian West, known for his work in mind control experiments, right? Can't believe this is out of order. That kind of pisses me off a little bit. So everyone's looking at, yeah, if you're looking at it right now, guys, the bombing didn't occur 4 times prior. I think we're going to have to delete that whole entire thing. But my point is, bear with me. Now I got to find it again. Yes. So I kind of get the picture. All the sources are actually in there, and all that information that's accurate is in there. But for some reason, the dates went all haywire and everything's all flip flop. That's me trying to copy and paste from my PC because it wouldn't work on my PC. So the one I want you to pay attention to, I mentioned the Tooth Radio. Federal marshals arrest Stephen Garrett Colburn. Arizona man believed to have been traveling with McVeigh immediately after the blast. Colburn is suspended on an unrelated federal firearms charge. Officials believe that Colburn might have driven a brown pickup truck spotted at the Oklahoma City police car video camera after the bombing. The truck reportedly carried a bag of ammonium nitrate fertilizer in its bed. There it is, right there, in the bed of his truck. Colburn. It was registered under Colburn's name. Colburn's father, an Oxford, California dentist, and his son holds a chemistry degree from UCLA. That dentist thing's important. So I'm telling you, I think specific individuals, perhaps. And again, I'm half tempted to delete that because that shit's so out of whack, and just re-put the sources back in there. But my point being, I think they were doing testing on making super soldiers, things like that. Again, I'll go back to, I think the Star Kids were subjected to the same device that they talk about at the beginning. When I was talking about at the beginning of this, and I posted in there, because it talks about trying to make psychic abilities. Hell, Project Superman, I bet that's what all these things are, trying to make super soldiers. And so I don't necessarily see, I'm not saying there aren't, like the Manchurian type candidate thing, because I know I found papers where they talk about programming with that stuff, and that's wild. I don't know if that's possible. Roy, maybe you can tell me more about that. Oh, Roy's not here. I forgot.
I've only just walked back, mate. I'd sent you a message.
No, I was getting ready to, I have to delete that out of order timeline, but I was asking. So I actually saw that you can actually utilize, I gotta find the paper, elf waves in a way of programming. Have you ever seen that, or do you know if something along those lines, considering what we've been talking about, the body's bioavailability of elf waves and specific frequencies, and maybe perhaps train them like a dog with frequencies, to act a specific way with a frequency without a person knowing it?
There's a possibility of that, some sort of influence of that. Yes, there's if you I mean, we found that people can be controlled by hypnosis and with triggered words, for example. We could use other things. Remain open-minded. Remain open-minded.
We can talk about anything else now, not elf waves. We can talk about UAPs, UFOs, whatever. Remote viewing. How do you feel about remote viewing?
But what is consciousness, mate? Like I was saying, it looks like there's some emergent element to it that we all share some form in a way. That domain essentially is a 0 point domain. So we're all there essentially together. There's no up, down, or whatever. So yeah, why not? Open-minded.
And sorry guys, I'm trying to relay that I'm not a total idiot in the thread, that it's all out of whack because of my bad copy and paste job. I don't think I'll be able to convince anyone I'm not a total idiot, so I might as well stop. Good stuff though. I'm just telling you that these elf waves are so important to a lot of this stuff. Earlier on, the only reason I started looking at them, one of the individuals I talked to, a source that I work with, actually had mentioned specifically those. Not many, like how or why, right? So I've just been looking, like, what do we do with these? Apparently, we can do a lot with these. So you guys a big fan of the human resonance or what? Apparently, I must be anti-human resident because I ain't feeling good at all. That's for damn sure. That shit's missing me. Kimball, don't make that face. You know damn well I'm right. Matter of fact, I'd probably avoid, if you could look at me and see frequencies, it hurts, you'd see a skip in my eyes. Just 7.8. Hey, Roy had enough of that shit. Thanks for being up here, Roy. Appreciate you, man. That was a good conversation. So, guys, come on up here. You're all welcome to come up and talk. Everybody but Kimball, get out of here. Now, come on in, Kimball.
Yeah, I got two, but thanks a lot, Shane. I appreciate you, having me come on here and what have you. I'll listen in for a little bit longer, but I just got to eat a little bit.
Dude,
And Roy, of course, too. Yeah, we'll talk again soon.
All right, brother. See you. Well, maybe we host a space together. We'll beat our heads against MH370 back and forth.
Yeah, we're going to do another space pretty soon. So, yeah, I'll let you know.
Ashton, thanks for all your work. Definitely do a space with Shane. But yeah, I just I think it's awesome what you're doing. Shane, I didn't exactly hear what you said. Did you say I saw a skip in your eyes? What was that exactly?
Yeah, I said everyone's welcome to come here and talk about anything they want except for Kimball, but you'd already come up and raised your hand.
I'll drop myself down. I'll drop myself.
No, dude, I love having you up here. I'm messing with you. I don't remember what I said, but
this is all just so wild to me,
because...
for real. Like, I thank God you're hosting the space. Roy is like a treasure trove, obviously. Ashton's putting in solid work, which is like, way more than 99% of this community, definitely myself included. I'm just intrigued by all of it. I'm trying to remain skeptical, but also like, what the fuck is going on,
What is going on? Tell me, what do you think's going on? I mean, Mello, what's up, dude?
Hey, just thought I'd join you. I love your spaces and I love these topics. It's great to see you all, Mr. Old Vet and Mr. Kimball and everyone else. Hey, Ashton. Hey, Roy. Hope to hear you speak. You've been so great in terms of educating me a bit so far. And it's really cool to have so many such experts and such cool people who are committed to finding the truth about all this. So glad to be here.
Hey, thanks. Actually, someone just asked a question if they can listen to the beginning. So I will do. Where's Ryan at? Ryan, why don't you help me put my YouTube channel in here too? Because all my spaces go on there as well. But when this is over, they're recorded. And I always retweet them. And so you can. But if you have a question, like if we said something about something we mentioned at the beginning, let me know and I can bring it up if you're missing it. So if you're just joining us, tonight we're going all gaga over elf waves because they're making us, right? That's a good joke. Garrett gets it. But my point is, these things are low frequency. They're everywhere. They're natural. And there's papers out there to talk about their use in forms of weaponization. Using Thomas Bearden is the one that discusses them in that form, right? Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden. I'm a huge fan of his, but using it to make docile masses, things like that. And it doesn't take a lot of power to use these devices. Matter of fact, Andre Puharich, who actually he invented a tooth radio. And the whole point of this was he called it, I forget the name of it. It wasn't even called a tooth radio, a device to emit something, right? But these ELF waves that we're discussing are so low frequency, you don't even know they're there. You won't feel them, none of that. But these ELF frequencies apparently break down your DNA and RNA, like down at the atomic level. I know one of the things that I had read was that because of that, your body will start leaking fluid, blood, things like that. And I know Timothy McVeigh had some of those issues when he was killed in Terre Haute. And I know it was Terre Haute, Indiana, because wildly, my dad was a prison guard there when it happened. I still remember that shit too. But yeah, weird stuff all around the board. But so that's what we're covering right now. But we can talk about anything in here. One of the reasons I brought it up, I'm a huge fan of Star Kids. All the stuff that entails, right? MK Ultra. Are they used to communicate with who and how are they different than Project Preserve Destiny, right? So these Star Kids, I think, in the paper that I posted in the thread, they actually talk about helping bring on psychic abilities with it. And they discuss almost like a method, and it sounds like something they would do in these programs to elate, a psychic ability or get these kids' abilities better and things like that. And if you don't know what a Star Kid is, you should Google Scott Andrews, because again, that shit's gonna be epic. What's up, Kimball?
I had a really good question. I don't remember what it is. I'm sorry. Go to Fearless.
Oh shit! I didn't even know my hand was up. My bad.
Let me ask you guys this: what are you guys thinking about? Did you guys watch the last interview of Weaponized on Weaponized?
I did. Did you watch the latest episode on Theories of Everything, Kurt Mungle with Jesse Michaels? Because that was fire too.
Really? I didn't watch it. I'm sorry. Gina Mungle knows about as much about UFOs as I do about painting my toenails, man. So,
but isn't that a perk?
If you want a podcast,
that's a feature. That's a feature, not a bug. That's a feature, not a bug, in my opinion.
If you want a podcast, Garrett's in here. Patterns tell stories, him and Klaus's, like we talked about last time. I'm telling you, I'm so sick of all these people having podcasts and they don't even know what fucking questions to ask.
Honestly, dude, I'm not gonna lie. Garrett and Klaus, I love their podcast. I'm not ashamed at all, actually, to say that. Like, those guys have a good flow. They're both super knowledgeable. There's some weird stuff going on in the background, whatever. I don't care. Like, I love that. Like, Patterns tell stories. Check it out. For real.
Way to sell it, bro. I'll pay you behind the scenes. You got to pay him now, Garrett. So check this out. My point being, I don't have a problem with these guys personally, but what I seem to see as someone who spends a lot of time in this subject and researching it, right? I get so pissed because I see these podcasts. I'm like, ask David this. Ask him. A lot of the questions I want to ask takes a lot of this, right? I get frustrated because it's...
No, honestly, Shane. Sorry, finish your thought.
You're fine. Go ahead, Kimball.
No, for real though, like they delve into that. Kurt Mungle, his latest episode, I think came out yesterday or maybe this morning, with Jesse Michaels, Theories of Everything. They talk about, like, ufology does have this issue where it's like, clearly, like, the hard sciences are, mired in some of the conventional, like, you get into the history stuff with Graham Hancock. It's kind of the same thing. Like, people have like they have their foundations of their career based in what has been like the conventional wisdom in any of these topics. So Kurt Mungle and Jesse Michaels explore kind of the inverse of that, the contrary side of it, which is like in ufology and paranormal, like both of these dudes acknowledge that, like, they're like both almost 100% sure there's something behind the paranormal stuff. But the problem is you get into these paranormal circles and people are just like so wide open that it's like, yeah, it's the reptilians, it's Jesus Christ, it's the Greys, it's spirits, it's ghosts, and it's Bigfoot. And it's like, well, where's the line, I really like the last Theories of Everything episode. I really recommend everyone listen to.
Yeah, I kind of get that, but that just makes me even go with what I said. Kurt doesn't know shit about the subject because, again, Valet, Keel, so many individuals have literally said if it's a control system, it's exactly that. That's my point. That's why I don't watch him. He literally just reminds me of someone sitting word salad. He wants to be he wants to make money. Is what he wants.
Oh man,
sorry.
I mean, I don't know. Say whatever you want about
what he does. Whatever.
Jesse Michaels, dude, like that guy clearly has done his reading. He's done his homework. He knows the shit.
That's a different story. Don't compare those two individuals, please. Jesse Michaels.
No, I'm just saying that Kurt's the one interviewing Jesse. Jesse's the one being interviewed, so don't judge it based on Kurt. Like, Jesse Michaels knows his shit.
Okay. I already watched Jesse Michaels interview David. Why would I want to watch? That makes no damn sense. Why would I want? It's like
You're right.
Wait,
You're right. All
I
that,
watched.
just
So
close yourself off to more information. That makes total sense.
that was killing me there. No, I mean, didn't. So I watched him. So he gave new information that David told him.
No, I'm just saying, like, David Grush is different than
Prove my
Kurt
point. Back off
Jaimungal.
me.
And Kurt
Prove
J-
my,
All right.
I'm playing with you, man. I'll tell you this. I don't like to watch a lot of TV. I don't like to do podcasts. I like to read. And I especially don't like to do podcasts all over the board because it's the same shit. And I'm past that shit. Not that I know
No.
literally.
No.
When you start spending some time reading, bro, Garrett, Klaus can tell you, a lot of the podcasts, it's the same questions over and over and over. No one's out here talking about
you know
synthetic
this,
day and a
Shane,
tooth
though.
ratio.
You know this. Like, whether it's millennials or Zoomers, like, people don't read like they used to. And so, frankly, like, when I listen to Kurt Jaimungal, who's clearly, like, he doesn't know as much as you do. He probably knows more than I do, but that's not saying much. I'm just saying, like, his background is in the hard sciences and fit. That's what I'm saying. Like, here's the thing,
But I
Shane.
didn't want you to think
We've got to shift the cultural zeitgeist. And if people are stuck in this materialist perspective, Kurt Jaimungal would seem like the perfect interviewer to talk about this stuff with. I think it's worth exploring personally.
I'm telling you, he would blow me out of the water and all that sciencey stuff. I get all that stuff, right? But I'm pretty good on that stuff. I'm saying the UFO topic, one of the things I get frustrated, and yeah, I get butthurt. I was talking about it last night. I think people like Klaus, Garrett, myself, people who can ask you a question just on the spitball, just because of our knowledge, not having to have papers. If they mention, let's say they mention the Italy crash, my head will go, what do you think about the whole Oppenheimer, the nuke being from that? And it be, questions that no one thinks to ask. Because sometimes when they bring stuff up, you want to be able to ask them a question and they may follow up with an answer that they normally wouldn't give. But no one asks stuff like that because it's always prepared. So it's only what they read. Sometimes he gives, when they say things, I always think, oh, ask him this. That's the shit we need. So not just us three. You got Witness Citizen. There's a ton of individuals that spend their time going through papers and things like that can do it, right? And I get frustrated that I don't see them getting the chance.
I get it. But Shane, you're kind of making my point now. Like, that's the beauty of it, is like all the people you just listed, they're already into ufology. We need people who are going to bridge that for the rest of the culture, because we gotta shift the zeitgeist on this topic. I mean, shit, Shane, I don't have to lecture to you. How many decades have we got? How many decades have we had of government obfuscation, stigmatization? Well, I mean, Eric Weinstein and Kurt Jaimungal are like the only people who have a foot in the hard sciences and are willing and open-minded enough to delve into this. It's obvious to me.
Well, I wouldn't say it's obvious, but I do agree with her on a lot of that, matter of fact, right? We do got to bring people in. You're right. I'm being a hard ass. I'm being pissy just because, again, why not bring your A team? They keep putting the B team in for interviews. I'm just saying, man, you got a lineup of people who do nothing but research this that would do it, right? And I just see the same stuff coming out. But maybe that's why. Maybe they're scared. Maybe that's it, right? They're scared of Garrett. I guarantee it. Garrett knows shit. Man, I'm telling you, there's individuals that I listen to, Garrett, Klaus.
Yeah, I mean,
because
based on the people I've met here, Garrett's at the top of my list as far as UFO knowledge. Like, that guy knows his shit, and he'll stand up for it too. That's not my point.
Yeah, I think the first time I met Garrett, I was having a bad day. I got all shitty about John Keel with him too, man. And we like same on all this shit too now. So yeah, he's smart as hell. I take stuff from him. That's my point. I don't think I've watched a podcast of a person. I don't know, man. The questions aren't for me, maybe. But you're right. More people need brought in. So Kimball, you got point on that one. I'm just being a butthurt because I think there's some questions that need.
Well, fortunately, you have your own platform. This is one of them right now that we're participating in, which is fantastic. And you have your own, other things that are fantastic as well. And it's a very tail end marketplace world that we live in. So a good aspect of that is that there's room for everyone. The real in depth stuff, and then maybe the stuff that can maybe be more of a welcoming mat to the normies. In terms of what Kimball was just bringing up, which is slightly different than the topic you were just discussing in terms of like, is this the optimized form of like, research in podcast format with the most credible people being platformed. I think you're correct that has to be done as much as possible and with great intensity and focus. But then there's the other kind of topic that Kimball was bringing up that is also really important, which we're kind of shifting to, of the idea of disclosure. Eventually, at some point, it's going to need to be, something that can be palatable or understandable somehow to the masses. I don't know to what extent we can do that on our own just by talking about it in a certain way or about certain aspects of it, the more esoteric or the more kind of normie, like, gray alien kind of tangible matter sort of, dramatizations. You can maybe use, documentary, for example, the greatest visual effects to convey what might seem like a really credible, depiction of something. But, what we're really lacking is some sort of concrete evidence and also some sort of at least declaration initially from the government saying this is real, and then ideally with some kind of proof. And I think without that kind of stuff, it's just, I think more and more people are accepting this to be most likely true, and that's cool. And I think we can expand that through various sort of things that we do. But in terms of it being that kind of beginning of a paradigm shift, we're just going to need something more tangible.
You know what? Mello's out here being the human as human residents, calming my ass down. You're right. On pretty much all fronts on that. So thanks. What's up, mister?
Yeah, I was going to say, the people that I look to, the likes of Avi Loeb and even Gary Nolan to a certain extent, because from what I can understand, they don't have an agenda. They just want to get the science out there, and they want people to, they want people to collaborate and work together. And that's what Neil deGrasse Tyson has talked about as well. And thankfully, it's been the case with the Mexican aliens. Is what they're doing is they sent them out to like 3 different labs around the world, so that everyone gets to participate. Everyone gets to be part of that exploration, as we all kind of do research together to figure out. And that's what I think is going to be very important in the future, if, and well, not if, but more when disclosure does happen fully and completely, is we're going to realize that we are, going to have to work together as a planet that is part of a much bigger, uh, system within the galaxy. Especially when you consider like the Galactic Alliance and all that kind of stuff, like all the things going on there. We're going to have to realize that we are a planet that has been at war with ourselves for really no good reason except for resources on our own planet. And we need to stop doing that, because they're like, there's going to be much more pressing things to worry about. And we're going to need to be in communication with each other and very transparent about that. And instead of looking at protecting individual countries, it's going to be about protecting the planet as a whole and preserving the ecosystem we have here. Because, like, it might not be a popular opinion, but I think it's a realistic one. I really don't think we're going to see ourselves moving to, like, other planets anytime soon. I mean, that's the pipe dream for people like Elon Musk and, some of these other tech heads. That's what they want to do. But, yeah, we need to focus on this planet. And I think trying to move away from here, instead of preserving what is already here, is a huge mistake. Like we need to put some love into our planet. I mean, that's one actually really interesting thing about the pandemic is like vegetation and stuff has started to grow because everyone was inside and wasn't using their cars. And like animals were returning to places that they weren't usually seen because everyone was just inside in their homes.
Thank you. So, Mello, what do you be working on today? You investigating anything? What are you looking into? What are you going to talk about?
Yeah, it's been a fun, it's been a fun experience today as usual. Well, like in general terms, I'm been working on two different investigations that are potentially going to be in documentary format. One is more sort of potentially serialized, maybe limited series to begin with. The other one, at least in its ideal form, would be a feature documentary, at least part one of that, because these things tend to keep going on. The story never ends, right? But yeah, generally, one of them has to do with some of the topics we're discussing, involving a very most famous missing aircraft in history. Another one has to do with more the political side of this history we're living through in terms of this quote unquote disclosure process, which we're all familiar with, which I'd love to pick your minds about here, and then also privately for more details. In terms of the, one of the things I was just in a meeting about before getting to jump on with you guys, is trying to, because I want to, this relates to what you guys were talking about, Old Vet, you and Kimball and such, about, all these goals of disclosure. And, in terms of the art related, things, including these films that I do about the topic, is my intention to sort of help us get out of the truth embargo and, the stigmatization through in part approach that is, more credible, combining both the highest credibility of journalism I can accomplish, as well as the highest quality of filmmaking art. So getting rid of all the sensationalized elements of, I'm not going to name certain shows that are out there, and things and content which have been, with all the heavy effects and the sort of overly dramatized music and the sort of sweeping, sort of generalities, and really just getting into what's really happening. So that's both for both those projects that applies. That's my approach, just kind of epistemologically for everything I do. So it's been fun. I've been talking to a lot of the kind of normies in terms of the people that make these kind of projects. Because trying to to the best of my ability educate them to the authenticity of what's really going on, or what at least needs to be investigated about it. So just essentially, the short version is to take this stuff seriously and to do it in an approach that I haven't seen before, in terms of treating it like a very serious journalistic and artistic kind of project.
That's good stuff too. And actually, estimates in here, having people, I always say this, different media formats and people taking it seriously, putting it out there, that's something to be proud of. That's important shit, man, because you literally want people to pay attention and not classify this as, either sci-fi or bullshit, right? So actually, how we make our material, which I need to work a little harder at it, people tend to classify us, and that stigma. Oh, bro, Mello, I don't know, man. That's crazy. The more you go, in my opinion, the more I go into the real, deal with sources and learn and talk about stuff before it's coming out or when it's going to come out, the more I get kind of pushed off in that stigma. Oh, is my mic shitty? Hold on, let me fix it. Give me a sec. Thank you, Roy. You're a badass. Is that better?
Yeah, you sound really clear now.
Yeah, much clearer.
I just gave you guys the formula to find UAPs. You missed it, and I ain't doing it again. Thanks, Roy, for alerting me, though, man. No, the more you get into the topic from the get-go, the more I talked about stuff and like what was getting crazy, and just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to get nutty all the way to the MH370 stuff, things like that, and the implications of that. I'm more about the tech and that aspect, right? Those things start getting a stigma thrown on you.
Doesn't matter how serious of a journalist you are, just ask Ross Coulthard or anybody that's went from one to the other. So it is a great idea for people to take it seriously and put things out there, especially different media formats. Kurt, all of them, right? And I actually, Kimball, again, you won that debate because the more I think about it, you also need people with a platform. It's not going to do any good for disclosure if Shane and his 2 subscribers has the best question ever for David, right? So I get that. I'm just being butthurt. I told you guys that. So don't sweat it.
I don't think anyone won or lost. What I was trying to say is that there's a place and necessity for both types of content. As long as it's done with integrity and truth.
Oh, no, I agree. No, I was just giving him points because you both were making me kind of see the light. I'm calling myself butthurt because I wasn't thinking about the bigger picture. I was thinking about what Shane wanted. Like Shane wants these questions asked and these individual that instead of what disclosure needed. So I kind of do that every now and again. Don't mind that.
But you're too hard on yourself, buddy. But I love that. I just want thank you for pointing out that Mr. Estimate's down there because that's a fantastic example of the kind of thing I aspire to, and so I really appreciate what he's doing. And it's really fine art and really seriously researched information. So I've always been a fan of this dude. So I'm very convenient that he's right there.
Heck yeah, it is. All right, guys. Hey, I'm gonna close this space up. Do me a favor, retweet it, put stuff in there about elf waves, anything. I gotta run to the store and I'll be back for Astral space. That'll be happening here in a little bit. I think I got the days right. So I appreciate you guys being here. I'm gonna try to do these a little more often just to bullshit and talk about the subject because I got a lot of research. Oh my gosh. I wish I had a better way of storing research. Yeah, I got a lot of research and I haven't done shit with it. Usually, before I put information out, I move on to something else, and I don't know why I do that. And then later on, I just come out and start throwing everything out like a series of tweets. So I'm going to work on that, guys. And thank you for bearing with me. What's up, Kimball? What do you got to say? Don't get attitude, Kimball.
All
I
that
see Ashton down there as well.
Astral rescheduled his space for tomorrow. He's traveling.
He is. Well, shit. What are you trying to hint for me to keep the space open?
He tweeted it. Go check his. I'm not trying to get you to do anything. I love this space. I'm just letting you know. Astral space is usually Thursdays. This week it's tomorrow.
Man, I should probably leave this. Look, I'm back in my old
You should
hometown.
probably trust Kimball a little bit more.
Yeah, I do trust you, Kimball. But I'm debating because I hadn't left the house since I moved here. I'm back in my old hometown. Everybody, all my family's avoiding me and shit.
Oh, dude, I feel that. Trust me,
This
I
is
get
nice.
that.
This is nice. I love it. No, I can't figure out why I was all fucked up.
Hearts in the chat right now for Old Vet Shane. Let's go. Hearts in the chat for Old Vet. We love you, dude.
Oh, I didn't hear the heart. I thought you broke up, and I thought you said farts. Get those hearts up.
What are you talking? I did say farts. Farts in the chat, guys.
That sounds about right. That's what they call me, right? That's nice. Damn, mistress. So do me a favor. I think I am going to actually end the space because I actually need to run down to the store. So retweet it. Everybody, thank you for being here. I'll start doing a lot more of these. I prefer these because I like talking to individuals. I mean, except for when they do that shit. Hey, make sure you clip that, Ryan, and you put that person's name for farting on my podcast. All right, guys. Retweet. Thank you guys for being here. I'll talk to you guys later.